أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Verily, a praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we seek His aid, and we ask for His forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our own selves and from the evils of our own actions. And whomsoever Allah guides, none can misguide. And whomsoever Allah leaves astray, none can guide back to the correct path. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. We testify there is no deity worthy of our worship except for Allah, who is alone with no partnership, that never has and never will be another. And we bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is the last and the final prophet of Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters, friends and family, everybody tuning into the live stream, and everybody joining in to the Zoom room. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We're blessed and honored to have you all for our Sunday discussion, where we will be continuing on the book When the Moon Split by Safiur, Rahman, Mubarakpuri. Today we're going to be continuing on page number 36. So this is after the initial parts of the revelation that were being revealed to Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and leading into the first believers after that revelation had began, inshallah. And we'll go until roughly 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, where we'll take our break and then continue in the following week. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Bismillah. So on the bottom here, the first believers. So Khadija was the first person to believe her husband had been chosen as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's messenger and prophet. As his wife, she knew more than anyone else did that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was no ordinary man. His sublime character and innate morality set him apart from those he lived among. And she had heard talk about Allah's final prophet who was yet to appear. She had also heard about some of the strange and miraculous events that others had witnessed concerning Muhammad. So, furthermore, she had heard Waraka say that the angel who had come to the cave of Hira was none other than Jibril, and that this angel had brought Muhammad a revelation from Allah. And lastly, she was present at the moment Surah al-Mudathir was revealed, and there were therefore only natural that she was the first to believe in Muhammad and his appointment as Allah's final messenger. Abu Bakr anhu was also among the first people to become Muslim. When the verses of Al-Mudathir were revealed, the Prophet ﷺ went to Abu Bakr, who was a leading Meccan trader and a prominent figure in his own right, and told him what had happened. 2 years younger than the Prophet, so he was thoroughly familiar with his friend's character and the reputation that he enjoyed in the community for his truthfulness. And Abu Bakr did not doubt Muhammad's declaration of his prophethood, just as he did not refuse his invitation to Islam. With his declaration of faith, he became one of the first Muslims. Ali bin Abu Talib anhu, was only a child when the Prophet ﷺ's mission had begun, and some sources indicate that he was 10 years old when he first became Muslim, and he was living under the Prophet's guardianship since his father, Abu Talib, was unable to provide for all of his children. And Muhammad ﷺ was like a second father to the boy, who believed without a doubt that his guardian was indeed a prophet and that he had brought the truth. And among the first to accept the faith was also the Prophet ﷺ's freedman, Zayd bin Harith bin Shawrabil Kalbi. Sold into slavery in the pre-Islamic era, Zayd had refused to leave the Prophet ﷺ when his relatives tried to buy his freedom. And for a while, he was known as Zayd bin Muhammad by following the prohibition of giving adopted children the names of their foster parents. He was referred to by his actual name as mentioned above. And notwithstanding the change of name, Zayd's love for the Prophet was deep, and the bond between the two was enduring. So these four, Khadija, Abu Bakr, Ali, and Zayd, anhum, accepted Islam the same day the opening verses of Surah al-Mudathir were revealed, and some sources hold that they accepted Islam in the same order as given above. And life changed for the new Muslims who desired to perform the religious practice of their families and their friends, And after his conversion, Abu Bakr began to encourage others to abandon idol worship and follow Allah's messenger. And a well-respected merchant known for his generosity and his intelligence, Abu Bakr was the foremost authority on Arab genealogy. His reputation and his character ensured that people gravitated to him, and if he deemed a person was sincere in finding the truth, he would talk to him about his new faith. And many people were interested in what he told them about Islam, and they went with him to the Prophet ﷺ, and among those who became Muslim in this way were Uthman bin Affan Ummi, Zubair bin Asadi, Abdul Rahman bin Auf Zuri, Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas Zuri, and Talha bin Ubaidullah Taymi. And many others from the Quraysh later became Muslims. Abu Ubaid, Amr bin Jarrah, Abu Salama bin Abdul Asad and his wife Salama, Arqam bin Abil Arqam, Uthman bin Madhun, and his brothers Qatam bin Madhun and Abdullah bin Madhun, Ubaid bin Harith bin Mutalib bin Abdul Manaf, Sa'id bin Zayd bin Amr bin Nafil and his wife, the sister of Omar, Fatima bin Khattab bin Arat, Jafar bin Abi Talib and his wife, Asma bin Umays, Khalid bin Sa'id bin As and his wife, Amina bin Khalaf, his brother, Amr bin Sa'id bin As, Hatib bin Harith and his wife, Fatima bin Mujalil, his brother, Khattab bin Harith, his wife, Fakiha bint Yasir, and his other brother, Muammar bin Harith, Mutalib bin Azhar, and his wife, Ramla bin Abi Auf, and Naim bin Abdullah bin Naham. And please forgive me if I mispronounce any or many of those names. More believers came from other tribes to embrace Islam. Abdullah bin Masud Hadhi, Masood bin Rabia Qari, Abdullah bin Jashash, and his brother Abdul Ahad bin Jashash, Suhaib bin Sinan Rumi, Amr bin Yasir Ansi, and his parents Yasir and Sumayya, and Amir bin Fuhaira, and Ayman Bakara, the Prophet's father's Abyssinian slave who had looked after the Prophet during his childhood, also became Muslim, as did Fadl Lubayl Babatul Kubra bin Harif Hilaliya, and Asma bin Abu Bakr Siddiq. And these and others who embraced Islam in the early days of Islam are called the earliest believers. And scholars put their number at 130, but the exact time of their declaration of faith cannot be determined. Such a list, including those companions also who embraced Islam after the Prophet of Islam began preaching his message openly. So the worship and the training of the believers is that despite the long gap between the first and second revelations, subsequent revelations came in quick succession after Surah Al-Mudathir. The next surah to be revealed was Surah Al-Fatiha. And Surah Al-Mudathir was not a set of instructions for the Prophet ﷺ alone. Its message was explicit for the believers as well, and in its verses, they were given a set of rules to live by, rules that still bind Muslims to the laws of Allah. And the surah teaches the believers how to praise and invoke Allah, some of whose principles, attributes are also mentioned in the verses. And we learn through it that each person will reap what is good or bad, of which they sow in this world, and what he will receive the recompense for it in the next world, and it guides one to the way of true successes. So other duties and acts of worship were instituted with subsequent revelations, and once the bedrock of faith in Allah and his messenger had been firmly established, the believers were instructed to build on their faith with acts of worship. And the first day ordained at the beginning of the Prophet ﷺ's mission, first duty ordained at the beginning of the Prophet ﷺ's mission was Salah, the prayer. Jibril alayhi salam taught the Prophet how to perform the prayers and the wudu, the ablution, and asked him to offer 2 rakats, the units of prayer, morning and evening. And since wudu was made a prerequisite for prayer, perfect purity became the sign of a believer. Salah was based on Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening surah of the Quran, and praise and glorification of Allah punctuated every movement made during prayer. And Salah was now established as the mainstay of the believer's faith, an act of worship to be offered twice a day. And trying to keep their worship pristine, far from idolatrous practices of Mecca, the believers would perform Salah in secluded places like vales and passes. And at this stage, the Prophet ﷺ's revelation focused mainly on the articles of faith and different aspects of Tawheed, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these early revelations exhorted the Prophet ﷺ's companions to purify their souls, aroused in them a sense of morality, and vividly described the paradise and the hellfire. And with their themes of the transience of life, the permanence of the hereafter, eternal joy, and everlasting punishment, the verses of the Quran offered much in the way of inspiration and admonition. And the Prophet ﷺ taught his followers the meaning of the verses revealed to him, and he offered them a perfect model of how to live by the teachings of the Quran. He led them from the darkness of unbelief to the light of faith by showing them the straight path and counseling them to hold fast to the religion of Allah. And although the Prophet ﷺ had not yet preached his message in the public, the Quraysh came to know of his activities, and some of the believers openly practiced their new faith, but the Quraysh in general paid no attention to it. Similarly, the Prophet ﷺ did not oppose them or their gods. So the open propagation of Islam is that the first 3 years of the Prophet's mission, had focused on bringing the message of Islam to individuals. And a discerning few amongst the Quraysh and other tribes had embraced Islam, but their numbers were hardly overwhelming. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered his messenger, sallallahu, to warn his kinsmen about idolatry. He was also asked to keep in his fold those who believed in the message and to renounce ties with those who rejected his mission. And after receiving this order, the Prophet ﷺ assembled his nearest kindred, the tribe of Banu Hashim, including a few people from Banu Muttalib. Addressing the gathering, he first praised and glorified Allah and bore witness to his oneness, and then he told them, I am the messenger of Allah, and I have been sent to you in particular and to all mankind in general. I swear by Allah that you will die in the same way you sleep every night, and you will be resurrected similar to how you rise from sleep in the morning. Following this, your account will be taken from you, and then your good will be paid with good and bad with bad. And the Prophet ﷺ's audience let him have his say. His uncle Abu Lahab was alone in saying, stop him before all Arabia unites against him. If you hand him over to them, then you will be put to disgrace, and if you try to save him, you will be killed. And the Prophet's other uncle, Abu Talib, said, I swear by Allah that we will protect him as long as we live. And Abu Talib then told his nephew, you try to fulfill what you have been ordered to do by Allah, I shall always defend you, even though I prefer not to abandon the religion of Abdul Muttalib. So a warning from atop of Mount Safa. During the same period, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet ﷺ, announce openly what you are commanded and withdraw from the idolaters. And in compliance with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's orders, he ascended the heights of Mount Safa, a small rocky hill near the Kaaba, and cried out from the highest point, Ya Sahaba. And the cry, Ya Sahaba, was normally used to warn citizens of impending doom, surprise attacks, or other sorts of great calamities. And he had alerted his fellow Meccans that something terrible was upon them. And then the Prophet ﷺ called every family and every household by name, O sons of Fahir, O sons of Adi, O sons of Abu Manaf, O sons of Abdul Muttalib, O sons of so on and so forth. The people heard their names being called, and they rushed to Mount Safa. Those who were unable to go themselves sent someone on their behalf to see what had happened. And when they were all assembled, the Prophet ﷺ said, if I told you that horsemen were advancing to attack you from the valley on the other side of this hill, would you believe me? And they responded, yes. Bewildered at his questions, we have always found you honest. And then he said to them, I'm here to warn you before a severe chastisement reaches you. I see the enemy charging towards you, and I want to protect you from his sword, but I fear he will strike you before I can give you warning. This is why I've cried out to you from atop this hill. And after this vivid analogy, the Prophet ﷺ asked them to save themselves by declaring that Allah was one and that he, Muhammad, was the messenger of Allah. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. He also explained to them that this testimony, the Shahada, was the only source of salvation in this world and in the hereafter. And he tried to make them understand that if they clung to polytheism and rejected the message he had brought to them, they would face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment, and that he, the Prophet, would not be able to save them despite his status as Allah's messenger. In addressing all segments of Meccan society, he further said, O people of Quraysh, ransom yourselves from Allah and save yourselves from the fire of hell, for I am not the master of your gain and loss, nor can I be of any help in saving you from Allah. O Banu Ka'ab bin Luay, save yourselves from hell, for I am not the master of your gain and loss. O Banu Qusay, save yourself from hell. O Banu Abdul Munaf, save yourself from hell, for I am not the master of your gain and loss. O Banu Hashim, save yourself from hell. O Banu Abdul Muttalib, save yourself from hell, for I am not the master of your gain and loss, and cannot save you from Allah. Take from my property as much as you desire, but I have no power to save you from Allah. O Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib, I can be of no help to you in saving you from Allah. O aunt of the Messenger, Safiur bint Abdul Muttalib, I can be of no help to you in saving you from Allah. O Fatima, daughter of the Messenger, ask for whatever you want from my property, but save yourself from hell. I cannot be of any help to you either from Allah. However, I am related to you, and I will fulfill my obligations accordingly. And after listening to this warning from the Prophet, the assembly dispersed. There is no record of their immediate support or opposition. However, Abu Lahab is reported to have said, enraged, may you be cursed, is it for this you have brought us here? And generally, the Prophet's audience seemed to have been somewhat amazed at the Prophet's outpouring and could not decide just then as what they should do. Once they returned to their homes, however, their arrogance reasserted themselves, and they disdained the Prophet's warning and exhortation. Thus, when the Prophet ﷺ passed by their elders, he would jeer, is this the one who has been appointed a messenger by Allah? Is this the boy of Abu Kabshash, who is addressed from the sky? Abu Kabshash is an ancestor of the Prophet ﷺ. On his mother's side, he had abandoned the paganism of the Quraysh and embraced Christianity. Hence, when the Prophet ﷺ began proclaiming the monotheistic message of Islam, the Quraysh were quick to link him with another so-called renegade of their society. And despite the taunts of his tribesmen and their increasing hostility, the Prophet ﷺ remained firm in his mission and began to invite people to Islam. He would recite verses from the Book of Allah, giving his people the same message that previous prophets had given to their people. And he would say, O my people, worship Allah without any partners or intermediaries, for none is God, your God except Allah. And he also began to pray to Allah in public, offering prayers in the courtyard surrounding the Kaaba, and the Prophet's preaching gradually gained ground. As more people, one by one, came into the fold of Islam, a gap started widening between the believers and non-believers, even in the same house. Of course, this only increased the resentment and the hostility of the Quraysh, who found it unforgivable that the new Muslims would choose Islam over family, tribe, and culture ties they deem sacrosanct. So the Quraysh warned the pilgrims. So with the Muslims growing in number, the Quraysh began increasingly perturbed. It was close to the time of the annual pilgrimage, the Hajj, to the Kaaba, and people from all over the peninsula were expected in Mecca before long. And the Quraysh feared that the Muslims would attract and influence the visitors. They also worried of the loss of faith that it would ensue if a rival religion flourished in the stronghold of their gods. A delegation of the Quraysh called on Walid bin Mughira, who was old and a man of standing. He said, "O people of Quraysh, the time of Hajj has come, and people from all sides will come to you. They have all heard about Muhammad, so agree upon what you say about him, lest you contradict one another." And the people said, "You say something and decide on a course for us." And he said, "No, you speak and I shall listen to you." People said, "Well, we will say that he is a soothsayer." "He is not a soothsayer," said Walid. "He neither speaks nor uh, versifies like them." "Then we will say that he is mad," someone suggested. "He is not mad," Walid said. "We all know the signs of madness. He does not behave erratically, nor is his speech confused." "Then we will say that he is a poet." "But he is not a poet," Walid pointed out. "We know the different kinds of poetry, and his words cannot be compared to any of them. Therefore, he is therefore not a poet." "Well, we will say he is a sorcerer," another suggested haplessly. "He is not a sorcerer either. We have seen sorcery and sorcerers. He practices neither the art of exorcism nor the tying of knots," Walid explained. And the people said, "What shall we say then?" And Walid thought for a moment and said, "By God, his words are sweet, fresh, and attractive. His root is firm, and his branches are fruitful. Hence, whatever you claim about him will not be believed. However, it is more convincing, in my opinion, if you were to present him as a sorcerer. You should say that he has brought a message by which he creates a rift between father and son, brother and brother, husband and wife. Under his influence, family ties have been rent asunder, and every day families break up because of him. And having agreed upon this line of defense, the Quraysh formed small groups to spread the propaganda, and they waited along the different paths, leading the pilgrims to their destination, and would caution every passerby about the Prophet, with the result that almost everyone formed an impression of the Prophet without having seen or heard him. And when the days of Hajj had come, the Prophet ﷺ rose to meet the pilgrims in gatherings. He would also call on them at their camps to invite them to Islam. He would say, "O people, say La ilaha illallah, and you will attain success." Abu Lahab, meanwhile, would walk behind the Prophet ﷺ, belittling him. And thus, by the time the pilgrims returned from Hajj that year, all of Arabia knew of Muhammad ﷺ and his mission, either through his own efforts or those of his detractors. And the other various strategies against Islam is that after the time of performing the Hajj, the pilgrims returned home to face the disquieting issue of a new rival religion. And having lapsed into polytheism for so long, the Arabs saw Islam as a new religion, one they had to stamp out. And they refused to acknowledge that it was simply a return to the pristine monotheism preached by their forefathers, Ibrahim and Ismail. And the outraged pagans devised various ways to deal with the current situation, confident that these plans, when put into action, would vanquish the threat of Islam. And their tactics included ridicule, abuse, slander, debate, and open harassment of the Prophet ﷺ and his followers. And next, the ridicule, contempt, and mockery to demoralize and demean the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. The pagan Arabs began to vilify him. This is a poet, a madman, a soothsayer. Satan comes to him and teaches him he is a sorcerer, a liar. And when they encountered the Prophet ﷺ, they would glare at him and say scornfully, "This is the man who decries our gods." And the idolaters would taunt Muhammad as they passed by them. "Look, the rulers of the earth come to you. Has Allah entrusted us to them?" This was a contemptuous reference to the weak social stature of the Muslim minority who had dared to confront the powerful majority. The unjust ridicule and condemnation deeply hurt even the Prophet ﷺ, where Allah SWT has says that we know that your breast is distressed by what they say, Surah 15, ayat 97. Allah then revealed verses of inspiration and comfort to help the Prophet ﷺ remain steadfast. Again, Surah 15, now ayat 98. Therefore, magnify the praises of your Lord and be among those who prostrate themselves before him. And in other verses, the Prophet ﷺ was told that Allah alone would judge the evildoers and the polytheists, and they would soon reap the fruit of their evil deeds. And consoling himself and his followers, the Prophet ﷺ had said, the messengers who came before me have also been laughed at and condemned, but the mockers found themselves surrounded on all sides by their own disdain. Regarding diversions, so not content with the slandering and the humiliating of the Prophet ﷺ, the pagans also attempted to keep others from hearing the Prophet ﷺ's message. And whenever he tried to preach to a group of people, the pagans would disperse the crowd before he had a chance to convey his message. And the first opportunity to preach in public came in Ramadan of the 5th year of the Prophet ﷺ's mission. It was then that he recited Surah Al-Najm before a large gathering. And whenever the Prophet ﷺ recited the Quran, which was usually during the later part of the night in voluntary prayer, the polytheists would make profane remarks about the Quran, the one who had revealed it and the one who brought it to the people. Hence, Allah ordered the Prophet ﷺ to lower his voice when reciting. Surah 17, Ayat 110. Recite your prayers neither in a very loud voice nor silently, follow a middle course. And to divert people's attention away from the stories of the Quran, Nadir bin Harith went to Hira in Syria and came back with the legends of Darius, Sikandar, Alexander, and Isfandiyar, a Persian king. And whenever he learned that the Prophet ﷺ was assembling an assembly, he would rush there and begin narrating these tales. He would then ask listeners how the orations of Muhammad could possibly be superior to his. And Nadir then went a step further and purchased singing girls. And if he heard that a certain person was considering becoming Muslim, he would carry the person to a courtesan and ask her to entertain him and serve him food and drink. And then he would tell the would-be Muslim that the company of the courtesan was far better than what Muhammad had to say. And then Allah then revealed the following verse, Surah 31, Ayat 6. There are among men who are ignorantly purchased meaningless tales to mislead men from the path of Allah, and they take the words of Allah as mockery. They will certainly endure a humiliating punishment. Propaganda is that when the pagans did not succeed in stamping out Islam by mocking the Prophet or by diverting people's attention from his teaching, they also attempted to discredit him. First, they claimed that the Qur'an was nothing but a bundle of confused dreams which Muhammad had at night and then recited during the day. Next, they claimed that he had concocted the Quran line for line all by himself, while at other times they said that a certain man composed the Quran for him, and Muhammad then simply memorized and recited the verses. And on other occasions, the pagans said that the Quran was all lies he had fabricated with the help of others. They also asserted that the Quran was a collection of folk tales and ancient stories which Muhammad recited morning and evening. They even went so far as to say that an evil jinn or demon taught the verses of the Quran to Muhammad. Thereupon Allah said, Surah 26, Ayat 221 to 222, shall I inform you about those upon whom demons descend? They descend upon every sinful liar. And the pagans also spread the rumor that the Prophet ﷺ suffered from fits and seizures. These frenzied fits, the pagans claim, were the source of Muhammad's poetic inspiration. And in reply to this claim, Allah SWT had said, same surah, verses 224 to 226, as for poets, only those who are astray follow them. They ramble aimlessly about every subject, claiming to have done things that they have not done. And in this verse, Allah challenges the pagans, claim that Muhammad was a poet. Three characteristics of poets are mentioned. First, that their followers are deviants. They expound their subjects without discretion, and they boast about deeds of which they did not perform. When we scrutinize the Prophet's character and those of his followers, however, we find that they were upright. Muhammad's teachings focus on calling people to worship of Allah, the one God, and that Muhammad put his teachings into action and lived by the precepts he taught his followers. So with that, let's go ahead and continue until we just hit 7:30 here, inshallah. Here, we'll stop here for today, inshallah, at the top of page number 50, inshallah, and we'll continue in the following week with that. Just like everyone for joining in, and we'll continue the argument and quibbling in the upcoming week, inshallah. Allahumma subhanahu wa bihamdi, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.